Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Mel Goldman with Channel 22, and it's my pleasure to welcome Bill Peter back to Society Trends and Likely Futures. We're calling that, we're giving the name to our show, and I think you're going to enjoy it very much. Welcome back, Bill.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be back.
We're going to be talking about unleashing wisdom, an optimistic view of the 21st century today. Is that right?
That's right.
Well, Bill, you've told me that you have recently completed a new book about the 21st century. Could you give us an outline of the new book, please?
Outline of a book which I'm excited about, obviously, because it just was completed in November of 2007, so it's pretty fresh. And it contains a lot of things that you are familiar with because it contains the 6 videos that you and I did last winter. So that makes it interesting because it's the first book ever to include 6 videos. And that's sort of fun. As a futurist, I like to do something that is fun, but also I visualize that 50 years from now, the conventional definition of a book, something that's bound in paper and carry around, won't necessarily be what a book will be like. I'm a futurist, and I think that a book will contain lots of videos in the future, and so I would like to have the first one. And the first one happens to include the 6 videos that you and I did last winter.
Bill, what is the meaning of unleashing and wisdom, and why did you select the title, Unleashing Wisdom?
Yes, the full title is Unleashing Wisdom, an Optimistic View of the 21st Century. Well, it's a little ambitious to say I know what the world's going to be like in the 21st century, but I have studied it and I'd like to take a crack at it and give an optimistic view. Now, how do you do that? You have to unleash wisdom. Let's take those 2 words. First of all, unleashing. Human beings have a fantastic capacity for wisdom, but we don't always tap it. So what we have to do is unleash that wisdom. I've told you before, but I think it's worth repeating. For a long time there was a debate, are we influenced by our nature, how we were born, or by our nurture? And we now know that 17% of all of the neurons in our brain were there at birth. The other 83% that we put into our brain, 83% of the billions of neurons that go into our brain through our lifetime, come from nurture. So we are not born smart. We are not born dumb. We are all human beings on Earth, 6.5 billion plus of them, are born with 17% of all the neurons that are ever going to be there at birth. And so what we have to do is unleash the fantastic potential of human beings by giving them the environment for nurture. If you are a child and you're in a country that speaks Chinese, your environment is Chinese, and you learn the Chinese language. But you don't learn other languages because you're not exposed to it. If you've never seen a giraffe, and you've never seen a book of a giraffe, or you've never been to a zoo, you don't know what a giraffe is. So we are influenced by our nurturing. To unleash that, we have to tap the human brain's capability, and that first 17% of what we're born with is fantastic. Eventually, if we've done a good job as parents and put the child in lots of opportunities to learn through its life, and then we do a good job as adults to keep nurturing our brain our entire life, even as seniors.
Especially as
seniors, we have to make sure that we don't give up. We stop learning when we get out of college? Baloney. We have to be learning something new every day. So that's unleashing. Now, what about wisdom? Wisdom is got 2 components. The human use of human beings, the ultimate best use of human beings, is interpersonal relationships, human to human. So only human beings are going to relate to other human beings. And the other dimension of wisdom, in addition to knowing how to relate to other human beings, is imagination. Thinking way, way beyond what we have learned as facts. What might happen? What could possibly happen? What could we make happen? So the human use of human beings is to have unleashed all our wisdom and known a lot about human relationships and a whole lot about our imagination. Albert Einstein said, it's fine to have knowledge, but the real power comes from imagination. Mm-hmm. And that's, somebody as smart, as knowledgeable as Einstein says, mm-hmm. just facts are not going to do it for you. You need your imagination to go further. Mm-hmm. So that's how I thought, put together, unleashing human potential is important, and also unleashing our creativity and imagination. That combination of unleashing wisdom is really the secret to having an optimistic view of the 21st century, which is the rest of the name of the book.
Would you say that a vision, if a person has a vision, and even if they haven't been well nurtured and didn't have an ideal childhood, don't you think most times if you think you can, you can? And if you think you can't, you're not going to even try. Well, how would you respond to that, Bill?
Well, that's absolutely true. There's three dimensions to having a successful life. One is the initiative you take and responsibility you take for your life. The opposite of taking initiative and taking responsibility for your life is saying, poor me, I'm a victim. I'm a victim, and poor me. In fact, there was a wonderful book written, 1950, 1960, in that neighborhood. And it was Games People Play. And Games People Play was written by Eric Berne, I remember him. And it's sort of a pop psychology book. And one of the most famous games that people play is, gee, ain't it awful? And one person says, I just got fired from my job, gee, ain't it awful? And then the other person says, oh, but I have cancer, gee, ain't it awful? And so when one person has something bad going on, we have something worse.
Upsmanship, even with that.
We just want to be
included in the tragedy.
Included in the tragedy, and we want to have something worse than the other person has, or at least as bad. And because we think about, we would like to have a perfect life, but if it isn't perfect, financially, emotionally, whatever, it isn't perfect, health-wise, we think that somebody did us in, that it was nothing to do
Just my luck.
Just my luck. It's nothing that we had to do with it. But a positive attitude in life says that you cannot be a victim. You must control your own future. And the way to control your future is say, what do I want? How do I get there? If I want to make a lot of money, I guess I better get some education. Or I better get a skill. I have to learn to lay bricks, or I have to learn how to
do a good job,
a carpenter, or I have to learn how to be a college professor. Whatever you want to learn to do, you have to put your mind to it and work hard. Now, to do that means you're not going to get instant gratification. You're going to get hard work for a while, and then some later results. But that's important to have our initiative and responsibility. And we have to take it ourselves. We can't expect that some of the world is going to take care of us.
Well, how do you contrast the futuristic book with the famous novel by George Orwell, 1984?
Many of our audience will remember the book 1984, and George Orwell wrote it in 1949. And he was, in 1949, looking 35 years ahead to 1984. Now, he was looking at the pessimistic view of the future. He saw in Germany and in Spain that the fascism was developing. And And he said, my goodness, the fascism in Germany and the fascism in Spain is an indication of what the future is going to be like. And he said, by 1984, what we're going to have is Big Brother. And Big Brother is going to be the government that's going to control us. And we will know every action that we take, even every thought that we have. So Big Brother will know our actions, Big Brother will know our thoughts, and we will be under complete control of this government, which in his view was going to be a fascist government, because that's what he saw as the trends, because he looked at the trends from Spain and from Germany. And he happened to be a man that was born in India, but was an English subject.
I see.
He was a socialist in England, and when George Orwell was his pen name. And
What was his real name?
oh, I knew you'd ask me that. I've forgotten his real name. I do know his real name, but
Senior moment.
Yes, I know, but George Orwell was his pen name. I led myself into that trap, didn't I?
Yes.
So he was looking in the future, and he saw 1984. Well, we've lived through 1984.
Yes, we
There is no thought control. There is no control of every movement anywhere in the world, not even in Germany and
In
Spain, where he was seeing the trends. So somebody writes, and it's a novel. He was writing a novel. But it was a very influential novel, because people were saying, here's somebody looking 35 years ahead, and they see this. They could have called him a futurist. I think that George Orwell's looking at the future that way was a negative view of the future. He wanted to see what's bad now is always going to be bad. We can't change it. See? What's bad now is always going to be bad. And my book, I'd rather say an optimistic view of the future, which is what's bad now, we can change. What's good now, we should emphasize.
Right. In your online book, you have a summary that's entitled 50 Years From Now, 2057. There are 10 summary statements. Would you please explain each of the 10 to our audience?
Well, I'll explain as many as we have reasonable time to
Okay.
do.
All right.
The key to the future is having some rationale for why you think this might happen in the future. Okay? And George Orwell was wrong. His rationale was, what I saw in Spain and Germany will be across the world, only worse, and there'll be thought control and control of every action.
With no chance of improving the
No
situation.
chance of improvement, and he was dead wrong, but very popular. You don't know sometimes that people are wrong until time has gone by.
And they were willing to accept
They
it.
were willing to
did
accept
they?
it because it was a fascinating hypothesis. You know, after all, he was a novelist.
Yes.
And he was only writing a fiction story, but as a fiction story, it was fascinating. So a lot of people in the 40s and 50s and 60s thought that that was probably what's going to happen. But as a futurist, you look back and say, somebody looked 35 years ahead and they were wrong. What about some other people who were looking 35 years ahead? They could be wrong too. As a futurist, I could be wrong looking 35 years ahead.
But you have a positive outlook.
But I'm going to say I'd rather look at the positive outlook. Now, this is how I come about what I do. My mom was born in 1898. My dad was born in 1901. Now, they're both wrong. They're in heaven today, you know, but they've been dead for some time. But that's right around the year 1900. So I have studied what all the trends are that have happened from 1900 to 2008. And so many changes, so many things have happened. Now, to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future, I picked the year 2057, because I wrote this book. It went to final on the web in November of 2007, so 50 years from now. What could the world be like in 2057? So I'll cover one or two issues. There's some things that you can look at the past and say it's likely to continue. And those things are important to see what...
Could you give us an example?
Sure. Look what's happened with agriculture there used to be a man with a plow, with a horse, with an ox, and now there's a tractor, and one tractor with its equipment can do what 50 people were doing, you know.
Exactly.
And so that is an improvement in productivity of one tractor with one driver doing what 50 people were doing before. And when you improve productivity, that really drives the economy. You can get a lot more done with less effort. So we now have gone through, instead of 70% of the people being on the farm, 1.7% of our population in the United States is on the farm. That's tremendous improvement in productivity. The poorest nations of the world still have a lot of people on the farm, right? Because they haven't got the productivity, they're not using the machinery, so on. What is the human use of human beings is to keep them away from back-breaking labor. So if you can get machines to do things, you don't need to use shovels, and you don't have to run a steel factory and have a lot of people killed. You don't have to have a coal factory, which the mines fall down on top of people. Have robots doing these things. So a robot is now drilling our coal mines. We get upset when we have some people die in coal mines, and that's justified.
Yes.
In 2007, we lost approximately 60 coal miners. Okay? In China, they lost over 3,000 coal miners. Okay?
It's an awful lot of people.
Okay. And our coal mining used to be a lot less efficient than it is today. But to drill out that coal, you use machines. You don't have all the people with a pickaxe. So you have to say, if we can get rid of the use of just sweat and back muscles, using robots is efficient.
Using robotic surgery.
That's right. Remote control surgery. And the same thing with computers. Computers can do a lot of things would have difficulty doing with pencil and paper, right? So computers. So when you go to robotics and you go to computers, you are making the human use of human beings, not just the things that you use with your muscles, and not just the things you use with routine things like the computer can do, but your imagination. That's going to continue. So, 2057, I believe what's going to happen is we're going to continue to have less and less need to do physical exertion things, and less need to do routine things like the computer can do. But what can we do then? What are human beings going to do? We will start to recognize, starting now, but 50 years from now, everybody will say, oh, we all knew that. We have to be better at human-to-human relationships, because that's strictly human things. And we have to be better at unleashing our imagination and our creativity, because no computer has imagination. So imagination and human relationships is really what human beings are about. And by 2057, my optimistic view of the future is we'll get it. And we'll realize that that's the proper use of human beings. That's just one of the points that will happen in the future.
Bill, how does this long-term view of 50 years from now apply to our Sun City Grand residents who certainly won't be alive in 2057? Sorry, folks.
You know, speak for yourself.
Okay.
No,
All right, let's be optimistic. Let's push the numbers
I'm
away.
teasing because
Okay.
my view of the future depends on 2020 and 2035. And 2035, at least, is when I'll be 100. Okay? And so you're right, I might not make it to 2057, but I'm planning on being there.
Well, if
At
all
least by
this,
2035, because at 100, I don't want to be what somebody is today at 100. I want to be a better Bill.
sure. And then, too, with all of the progress with machinery replacing human sweat
Well, I might
and
have,
energy,
I might have all replacement parts,
yeah.
except the brain. Maybe it'll be there.
The brain will be there.
Oh.
But all of the new technology and things make it so that we are living longer. But let's say that does this matter to us? Does it matter to us right now the year 2057? How do we view that?
I think it matters to us because there are some things we have to do now to make the future happen. And I'll give you an example. There are people who get upset by the fact that China is growing very fast, 9-10% per year.
Mm-hmm.
India is growing very fast, 8-9-10% per year. And I have done studies of the world economies from 1900, back there when my parents were born,
Mm-hmm.
to 2060. And what I've come to the conclusion is it is wonderful that these other nations of the world are growing so rapidly.
How does that help us?
It's wonderful because it improves the standard of living of all human beings on Earth. And our job is not just to be rich Americans. Our job is to do what is the most ethical, positive, loving thing for all human beings on Earth. Every human being is precious. Every human being is precious. And I think it's wonderful if we grow at 3% per year and these other nations grow at 10% per year. What's happening, for example, in China in the last 30 years, 400 million people have gotten out of poverty. 400 million, that's more than the population of the United States. 400 million people have gotten out of poverty in China. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
You know? And if they're out of poverty and have a good standard of living, maybe they will like the free enterprise system. China is starting to learn to love the free enterprise system. They're a communist nation, but boy, they like to make things and sell things and make profit. You
Yes,
know?
they do.
And that's
certainly
good.
do.
It's
That's
good for Americans, too, because if everybody in the world has a good standard of living,
Mm-hmm.
there's less likelihood that one's going to attack the other. You know, why do we have to capture these other people? We've got it good, pretty good right now. So what's going to happen in the future depends on what actions we take today. And I think one of the things we have to recognize is that the United States only has 5% of the world's population. And with 5% of the world's population, and looking at the growth rate of all the nations in the world, by 2057, we will most likely be the third richest nation in the world. India and China, both, will be ahead of us. We're not going to be the first richest nation in the world. We're going to be the third, or thereabouts.
Well, we're fewer people to begin with.
Yes, but they will be richer on per capita, and they'll be richer on total also. So we'll be the third largest nation. And you know what? We will have a wonderful standard of living, and it's not so bad that we're the third largest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we don't have to be number one.
No.
You know, and Great Britain at one time was the king of the world. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, this upstart, the United States comes in, and then we become the number one in the world.
Yeah.
It's not so bad if the two largest nations in population, because between China and India, they're 40% of the world's population.
Mm-hmm.
If they become number one and two,
And we're three.
and we're three, not so bad at all. And everybody's got a good standard of living. And now, however, when we think about 2057, gee, do we want to be the policeman of the world?
Good point.
We're only 5% of the population of the world. Should we be the policeman of the world? And in my judgment, in the next 5 years, now, in our lifetime, in the next 5 years, we need to make a decision. And the decision is we don't want to be the policeman of the world long term, and we've got to start now. And the first step that we can take to say that we're not going to be the policeman of the world
What's it going to take?
in the next 5 years is to say 50% of all of our military and support people that are outside the United States right now, within the next 5 years, we'll bring them back to the United States. And that says we're not going to reduce the number of total military and support people, but we're going to take those that are spread out all over the world, 50% reduction of that in the next 5 years. If you have a long-term view that we're not going to be a policeman of the world when we're the third largest nation in the world, why should we be now? Well, if we are, let's start making a change. And the change is bring 50% of all of our troops and support people outside the United States back to the United States within the next 5 years. That's a decision to make now. Sun City Grand people could support that kind of thing. Politicians, nobody has suggested that, okay? We hear, get the people out of Iraq. But I'm suggesting, let's reduce our entire military force and support people back to the United States 50% within the next 5 years. And then probably one of the most provocative things that I have in the picture of 2057, and people have told me it's provocative, and I said yes, but that's the way it's got to be. We should, by December 31st, 2009, very soon, December 31st, 2009, resign from the United Nations. And we should tell the United Nations, find a home other than New York City. And there are some people who will be shocked by that because they say, oh my goodness, the United Nations is a wonderful place. We've had a session previously where we talked about the United Nations, and the United Nations is not fulfilling its charter, and it has been obsolete for a long time. It was formed in 1945, and that means it's 63 years old. And in 63 years old, it has not changed its basic structure of 5 veto powers on the Security Council. It has not stopped wars, which was its purpose, to stop wars. It has got fraud in it. It's got bureaucracy in it.
You think we need to restructure it or eliminate it altogether, Bill?
We talked before in one of our other sessions, but it has to be eliminated because it is not capable of restructuring. If you try to restructure it, all the people who are in it today would have a vote on the restructure. And, you know...
Back to square one.
Back to square one. For example, India can't get a vote because they're not on the Security Council. And right now, China is paying 3 times as much to the expenditures of the United Nations as Russia is. 3 times as much. China doesn't have the power that Russia has, you know, but Japan, I misspoke. Japan is paying 3 times as much to the United Nations as Russia. Russia has a veto power. Japan doesn't have a veto power because Japan and Germany lost the Second World War.
Yes.
So I think time is getting close, and we have to wrap things up, so I can't cover every one of the 10 issues. But if we're looking to the future, we have to recognize that the United States is going to be a different place in the world, but we're all going to be very rich, very prosperous, and we should be very happy that other people are being so too. We have work to do on our deficiencies. Our biggest deficiency is our K through 12 system, and that's another story for another time, but that's our biggest shortcoming in the United States.
Our education system.
Is our education system.
We're going to talk about that.
We'll talk about that separately, but that's a big point. We've got to improve it, and to say it can't be improved is George Orwell. And Bill Peter will not agree with George Orwell. We're going to improve it.
I have a tip for everybody out there from Barbara Mel Goldman, Channel 22. If we're going to last till 2057 or beyond, let's do what we can to improve our health. And we have the wonderful opportunity of going to the gym and getting fit and watching our diets. It's as simple as that, folks. You have a choice. You can get old or old and sick. The choice is yours. Thank you, Bill, for a wonderful afternoon. You've been very informative, many, many profound thoughts, and lots to think about, and maybe we can get busy and get active on some of these topics. I'll look forward to having you back very soon for Channel 22. I'm Barbara Mel Goldman, and it's a wrap.